In the lexicon of the 41st millennium, there is no word for peace. The very concept is a forgotten myth, a faded tapestry from a bygone age of impossible innocence. The only truth etched in blood and fire across a million worlds is the eternal grinding reality of war. It is a galaxy drenched in the cacophony of slaughter, where the laughter of thirsting gods echoes in the warp, and the dying screams of countless billions are a constant, unheard prayer to an indifferent cosmos. In this age of utter darkness, the imperium of man endures. It does not thrive. It does not flourish. It simply endures. And its endurance is purchased not with hope or valor, but with a currency of cruelty so profound it defies mortal comprehension. It is a bastion of humanity built upon a foundation of bones, cemented with the blood of martyrs and tyrants alike. Its continued existence a testament to the grim arithmetic of survival, that to fight monsters one must create monsters of a far more terrible and efficient design. This brutal calculus finds its ultimate expression in the silent shadowed halls of the Officio Assassinorum. While the massed armies of the Astra Militarum are the hammer of the Imperium and the Adeptus Astartes its holy sword, the Assassinorum is its scalpel, a blade applied with clandestine precision to the neck of rebellion, heresy, and alien corruption. It is an organization that exists beyond the sight of common man, a necessary sin sanctioned by the high lords of terror themselves. Within its secretive cloisters, human beings are unmade and remade into living weapons, each honed to a singular lethal purpose. 6 major temples give form to this deadly creed. There is the Vindicare, the patient hunter, the long rifleman, who can deliver the Emperor's judgment from a mile away with a single perfect shot, a ghost who ends wars before they begin. There is the Kalidas, the shapeshifter, the master of deceit who can wear the face of a trusted friend or a beloved consort, turning an enemy's own strength against them with a poisoned kiss or a dagger in the dark. There is the Kulexus, the soulless, the antipsyker, a chilling void in the fabric of reality, whose very presence is anathema to the witch and the sorcerer, their unnatural powers turning to ash before the assassin's horrifying emptiness. The Venenum are masters of poison, the subtle killers who can engineer a plague to decimate a dynasty, their methods as insidious and patient as a terminal disease. The Venus are the information brokers, the cyber assassins who dismantle empires not with blades, but with dataphages and logic bombs, turning a foe's command network into a self-immolating pyre. Each is a pinnacle of specialized murder, a testament to the Imperium's capacity for focused methodical lethality. And then there is the Eversor. The Eversor Temple stands apart, a monument to unbridled incandescent rage. Where other temples embrace subtlety, the Eversor is a declaration of terror written in viscera. Where others seek the silent kill, the Eversor is a symphony of destruction, a berserker's roar given human form. It is not a scalpel. It is a living chain reaction of violence, a biological apocalypse deliberately unleashed upon a localized target. An Eversor is not deployed to eliminate a single commander. It is deployed to annihilate that commander, his entire command staff, his fortified bunker, and the very memory of his rebellion from the minds of those who witness the carnage. They are the Imperium's final furious sanction, a weapon of such psychological horror that the mere rumor of their deployment can break the morale of entire armies. They are not assassins in the traditional sense. They are exterminators. This narrative, this scripture of the damned seeks to answer the central chilling question that lies at the heart of the Eversor Temple. What unimaginable cruelty is required to forge a weapon more cruel than the galaxy it is meant to fight? This is not a story of training, for one does not train a hurricane. It is a chronicle of systematic annihilation, the methodical deconstruction of a human soul. It is the story of a brutal surgery performed upon mind, body, and spirit, a process designed to carve away every shred of humanity, every memory, every hope, every fear, and leave behind only a perfect, undiluted vessel for hatred and slaughter. This is the journey into the heart of the Forge, to witness the unmaking of a person and the birth of a monster. A monster created to serve the will of a silent, distant emperor on his golden throne. This is the genesis of an Eversor assassin. The raw material for a perfect weapon cannot be sourced from a stable, civilized world. Peace breeds weakness. Comfort engenders complacency. The clay from which an Eversor is sculpted must be found in the harshest, most unforgiving corners of the Imperium, in places where life is a currency spent cheaply and rage is the only tool for survival. The search for these candidates is not a recruitment drive. It is a harvest, a culling of the most violent and resilient souls the galaxy has to offer. The first reaping grounds are the Schola Progenium, the vast, brutal orphanages of the Imperium. Here, the children of decorated imperial servants who have fallen in battle are raised to serve the throne. But not all are destined for the Commissariat or the Adepta Sororitas. Agents of the Assassinorum, disguised as drill abbots and proctors, walk these cold, echoing halls with a different purpose. They are not looking for faith or leadership. They are searching for a specific volatile pathology. Their eyes pass over the diligent, the obedient, and the pious. They linger on the outcasts. The child who in the brutal sparring cages does not merely defeat his opponent, but tries to break him. His eyes alight with a fire that has nothing to do with duty. The silent orphan who watches the others with a predator's stillness, whose compliance is not born of loyalty, but of a coiled, waiting violence. These children are subtly segregated, their environments manipulated to amplify their nascent aggression. Their rations are reduced, forcing them into conflict over scraps. They are subjected to drills designed to induce paranoia and betray trust. They are not raised. They are curated in a crucible of misery, their spirits systematically abraded until only the hardest, most hateful core remains. When a child finally breaks and commits an act of truly irredeemable violence against their peers or instructors, they are not punished. They are taken away in the dead of night, their records expunged, their existence erased. They have passed the first test. The second field for harvest lies far from the Gothic spires of imperial institutions on the savage deathworlds and feral backwaters that litter the galactic fringe. On these planets, civilization is a distant memory or a concept that has never arrived. Life is a daily bloody struggle against monstrous predators, lethal flora, and rival tribes. Here, the agents of the temple do not walk in disguise. They are ghosts observing from orbit or through cloaked reconnaissance drones. They watch tribal wars fought with obsidian axes and primitive slug throwers. They witness gladiatorial combats in pits of sand and bone where champions fight not for glory, but for the right to eat, to breed, to live another day. They are looking for the same spark they sought in the Schola Progenium, but here it is not a hidden pathology. It is an open, roaring flame. They seek the warrior who laughs as he kills the hunter, who feels no remorse, only the thrill of the chase and the finality of the blow. The selection process here is brutally simple. Once a suitable candidate is identified, a warrior of unmatched ferocity and psychotic aggression, the temple makes its presence known. Often a challenge is issued, a trial by combat against a servitor or a junior agent. More commonly, the harvest is a swift, violent abduction following the candidate's latest victory. They are taken from the only world they have ever known, a world of constant struggle, and thrust into a darkness far more profound, their savage screams silenced as the shuttle ascends into the uncaring night. From the orphanages of the devout to the blood-soaked arenas of the savage, the finest raw ingredients of hatred and violence are collected, ready to be broken down and remade in the temple's image. The human mind is a fortress fortified by memory, identity, and the stubborn will to exist. To create an Eversor, this fortress must not be merely breached, It must be razed to the ground, its foundations salted, and its very memory erased from the landscape of the soul. The process is not one of training or conditioning. It is a systematic and merciless demolition of the self, a psychological scourging that leaves behind nothing but a vacant, echoing chamber ready to be filled with pure, weaponized rage. The first stage of this unmaking takes place in what are known as the echoing chambers. The candidate, stripped of all possessions and rank, is sealed within a sterile white cell devoid of any sensory input save for that which the tormentors allow. For weeks that bleed into an eternity of undifferentiated time, they are subjected to a carefully orchestrated assault on their sanity. The absolute darkness is punctuated by blinding flashes of strobing light, revealing horrific images of xenos, atrocities, and heretical carnage for fractions of a second. The crushing silence is broken by a constant low-frequency hum that vibrates through their very bones and then shattered by blasts of white noise, distorted screams, and the ceaseless, maddening drip of a single drop of water. But the true horror is the whispering. In the moments of near silence, a chorus of disembodied voices murmurs directly into their minds via psychic resonators. The whispers speak of their failures, their insignificance, the sins of their ancestors. They repeat litanies of hatred, psalms of imperial fury, and over the simple, devastating message: "You are nothing. You are a vessel. You belong to us." Sleep is a luxury that is denied. Nutrient-paced, tasteless and cold is dispensed at random intervals, ensuring the body survives while the mind starves. The candidate's own thoughts become their enemy, the fortress of their mind turning into a prison of paranoia and despair. When the candidate's psyche is sufficiently fractured, when they can no longer distinguish between reality and hallucination, they are moved to the next phase, the mnemonic wipe. Strapped to a surgical slab that resembles an instrument of torture, a complex crown of neurocables and crystalline projectors is lowered onto their shaven skull. This is the domain of the psychosurgeons and the logisticians of the soul. A cocktail of powerful memory-erasing chemicals is pumped directly into their bloodstream, targeting the cerebral cortex and hippocampus. Simultaneously, the psychosurgical device activates, sending targeted waves of energy and subliminal data phages deep into the candidate's mind. It is an excruciating process. The candidate convulses against their restraints as their life is forcibly unwritten. The face of their mother dissolves into static. The memory of their first kill, the pride or the terror it inspired, is reduced to a meaningless neurological flicker. Their name, the very anchor of their identity, is scoured away until it is just a nonsensical sound, a ghost on their lips. They scream, but no one listens. They are fighting a war for their own existence on a battlefield within their own skull, and it is a war they are designed to lose. The surgeons monitor the process on flickering cogitator screens, watching the vibrant tapestry of a life unravel into a dull grey uniform canvas. The person who was is executed not by a bolt pistol, but by a precise and technological erasure. From this absolute void, a new consciousness must be constructed. The mind, now a barren wasteland, is ready for planting. The final stage of this psychological demolition is the insemination of pure, unadulterated hatred. The whispers do not stop, but their message changes. They no longer speak of insignificance, but of purpose, the purpose of hate. The candidate, still weak and disoriented, is placed before massive pict screens. For days on end, they are forced to watch an endless stream of imperial propaganda at its most visceral and terrifying. They see the slavering jaws of the tyrannid, the decadent cruelty of the Drukhari, the obscene heresies of the chaos worshipper, the brutish thuggery of the orc. Each image is accompanied by psychoactive triggers, chemical stimulants, and a booming catechism that pounds the new reality into their malleable minds. The alien is filth, the mutant is corruption, the heretic is a disease. The lessons are simple, absolute, and violent. There is no room for nuance, no space for doubt. The Imperium is humanity's only salvation, the Emperor its only god, and anything that stands against them is a blasphemy that must be purged with extreme prejudice. Their broken minds cling to this new creed as a drowning man clings to a rock in a stormy sea. It is the first and only solid thing they have known since their old self was destroyed. Hatred becomes their new identity. Rage becomes their new reason. The empty vessel is now filled with a poison directed outward at all the enemies of mankind. The mind is broken, wiped, and rebuilt. The weapon is beginning to take shape. With the mind scoured and reforged in the fires of ideological hatred, the focus shifts to the physical vessel. The body, like the spirit, must be broken of its old habits and instincts, stripped down to its most primal predatory core. The initial physical trials of the Eversor temple are not about building strength or skill. They are about fostering a state of relentless animalistic aggression. They are designed to extinguish all notions of cooperation, compassion, and self-preservation, replacing them with the singular brutal law of the jungle kill or be killed. This is the trial of the steel cage, a series of brutal ordeals where the candidates are pitted not against designated targets, but against each other. The first test is known as the bloody meal. A cohort of 24 candidates, their minds still reeling from the mnemonic wipe, are cast into a vast circular arena of rusted iron and blood-stained concrete. The air is thick with the smell of sweat and fear. High above, gratings in the ceiling are the only source of dim, oppressive light. For days, they are given nothing. No food, no water. Hunger gnaws at their bellies, and a desperate thirst cracks their lips. Their new conditioning screams at them that the others are obstacles, rivals, things of flesh that stand between them and survival. Then, without warning, a single bloodied carcass of meat and a few canisters of water are lowered into the center of the pit. There is not enough for everyone. There is barely enough for a few. The result is instantaneous and horrific. The carefully implanted seeds of hatred and paranoia bloom into a frenzy of violence. There are no rules, no honor, no alliances. It is a chaotic melee of fists, feet, and teeth. Candidates who only days before shared the same silent torment now tear at each other with feral desperation. The weak are trampled, their skulls smashed against the floor. The hesitant are overwhelmed, their lifeblood watering the thirsty ground. The only ones who eat, who drink, are those who are willing to inflict the most savage violence upon their fellows. The temple's masters watch from observation, slits their faces impassive. They are not judging fighting skill. They are judging the purity of the killing instinct. Those who survive the bloody meal, their hunger sated for a brief moment, are immediately thrust into the next ordeal, the labyrinth of pain. This is not a simple maze, but a sprawling, multi-leveled death trap of industrial corridors, claustrophobic maintenance tunnels, and vast, echoing chasms. The entire structure is a weapon. Pressure plates in the floor trigger scything blades from the walls or jets of superheated steam from the ceiling. Doors lock behind them, flooding corridors with noxious gas or plunging them into absolute terrifying darkness. But the environmental hazards are only part of the test. The labyrinth is patrolled. Hulking combat servitors, their minds long gone, trundle through the halls, their limbs replaced with hydraulic claws and chain blades. Caged, gene-enhanced predators starved for weeks are released into the maze to hunt the candidates down. The goal is not merely to find the exit. The goal is to become the apex predator within the ecosystem of death. The candidates must learn to use the darkness to set ambushes, to turn the labyrinth's own traps against their pursuers, and more importantly, against each other. They hunt one another for scraps of scavenged equipment for a moment's respite in a secure chamber, or simply to eliminate a future threat. Survival is not enough. Dominance is the key. The most efficient killers, those who adapt most quickly to the constant threat and learn to revel in the bloodshed, are the ones who find their way to the labyrinth's heart. The exhausted, wounded, and gore-splattered survivors who emerge from the labyrinth are gathered in a final, stark chamber. They are the winners, the ones who proved their ferocity and their will to live. They stand panting, their knuckles raw, their bodies a canvas of cuts and bruises. They have endured starvation traps, monsters and their own kind. A sense of grim accomplishment, a flicker of pride might even begin to kindle within their brutalized minds. It is then that the final lesson of this stage is delivered. A voice, cold and disembodied, booms from hidden speakers declaring that the trial is complete. It announces that only half of their number have been deemed worthy to proceed. The other half have shown weakness, hesitation a flaw in their killer instinct. A rack of crude, heavy-bladed knives slides out from a wall recess. The final instruction is given stripped of all emotion. Perform the first purge. Prove your loyalty. Eliminate the unworthy. For a heart-stopping moment, there is silence. Then the true horror dawns. The survivors must now turn on the very people they just fought alongside and against. This is the ultimate test of obedience and ruthlessness. Any lingering shred of camaraderie, any vestige of empathy, must be surgically excised by their own hand. The chamber becomes a slaughterhouse once more, but this time it is not a chaotic frenzy. It is a series of cold, calculated executions. Those deemed worthy carry out their orders without question, plunging their blades into the hearts of their former rivals. It is the final brutal lesson in the unmaking of a man. Loyalty to the temple is absolute, and the only life that has value is the one that serves the Emperor's will to kill. Having shattered the mind and brutalized the body into a state of primal aggression, the temple must now provide a framework for the candidate's rage, a doctrine to channel their newfound savagery into a righteous and holy purpose. The indoctrination of an Eversor candidate is not an academic exercise conducted in lecture halls. It is a visceral, immersive catechism written in blood and amplified by psycho-conditioning. The candidate's shattered mind, now receptive and desperate for structure, must be taught to see destruction not merely as an act of survival, but as the highest form of worship, a sacred duty performed in the name of the God Emperor. The classroom for these neophytes is the simulacrum mortis, the chamber of simulated death. Here they are strapped into cognitive feedback rigs, their minds directly interfaced with archival recordings of past Eversor missions. They do not simply watch, they experience. They are plunged into the sensory reality of a fully realized Eversor assassin in the throes of combat. They feel the percussive kick of the executioner pistol in their grip, the slick wetness as their neuro-gauntlet plunges into heretic flesh, the exhilarating surge of combat drugs flooding their system. They witness firsthand the glorious wholesale slaughter of the Emperor's enemies. These are not sterile training simulations. They are raw, unfiltered picked captures from the assassin's own helmet feeds. They experience the death of countless traitors, aliens, and mutants, each kill accompanied by a wave of subliminally projected pleasure and righteous validation. The instructors, known as prefects of fury, guide these sessions, their voices a constant litany in the candidates' minds, interpreting the carnage. The spray of an orc's blood is not gore, it is a holy ablution. The scream of a dying sorcerer is not a sound of agony, it is a hymn to the Emperor's glory. The act of killing on a massive, indiscriminate scale is reframed as the litany of annihilation, a sacred rite that purifies the galaxy. The candidates are taught to worship the memory of the fallen assassins they inhabit, to see them as saints and martyrs of the imperial creed, and to yearn with every fiber of their being to emulate their divine destructive purpose. This spiritual indoctrination culminates in a singular, solemn ritual, the Oath of Silence. The surviving candidates, now honed into efficient killers with minds filled with holy hatred, are led into a stark, cold sanctuary. The only light comes from a single flickering lumen globe suspended above a stone altar. The walls are lined with the crypt niches of past Eversors, each marked only by a serial number and the skull-faced mask of the temple. The candidates are no longer addressed by their original names, which they can no longer remember, nor by any given designation. They are simply subjects awaiting their transformation. One by one, they are brought before a high prefect, a figure cloaked in black, whose face is permanently hidden by the polished silver of a master-crafted skull helm. He holds a ceremonial dagger, its edge humming with a low-energy power field. The candidate kneels. The prefect recites the oath, a promise of absolute obedience, a vow to forsake all identity, all desire save for the mission. "You have no name." The prefect intones his voice amplified and metallic. "You have no past. You have no future. You are a vessel. You are a number. You are a weapon forged for the death of his enemies." With the final word, the prefect draws the humming blade across the candidate's palm. The candidate does not flinch. They take their bleeding hand and press it firmly against a heated iron plate on the altar, searing the oath into their flesh. The smell of burning skin fills the chamber. It is the smell of their final binding contract. From this moment forward, they are truly anonymous, a tool in the process of being sharpened. They have relinquished the last vestiges of their former selves, pledging their very existence to the single glorious purpose of death. They are now and forever nothing more than a number awaiting activation, an instrument of the Emperor's boundless wrath. The mind is a weapon, but the flesh is its housing, and the housing of a standard human is tragically frail. It tears, it breaks, it bleeds, it succumbs to exhaustion and poison. To wield the incandescent fury that the temple has instilled, the candidate's body must be reforged as brutally and thoroughly as their psyche. They must be rendered more than human, a seamless fusion of biological tissue and unyielding machine, a living weapon platform capable of enduring and inflicting punishment far beyond mortal limits. This transformation takes place in the Medici Forge's sterile theaters of gleaming chrome and sanctified machinery that are less places of healing and more abattoirs of radical reconstruction. The first step in this agonizing process is the reinforcement of the very frame. The candidate is strapped to an operating slab, their body held immobile by heavy adamantium restraints. A host of Medici servitors and tech priests, their own bodies, a grotesque fusion of flesh and metal, surround them. The air hums with the sound of power generators and smells of sterilizing incense and cauterized blood. The procedure begins with the skeleton. High-powered bone saws, their diamond-tipped teeth whining as they spin to life, cut precise channels into the candidate's major bones, femur, tibia, humerus ribs, and cranium. The pain is immense, deliberately kept just below the threshold of consciousness by a drip of agonizing chemical stimulants. The candidate must be aware of their own unmaking. Into these channels, molten adamantium, the near indestructible metal of legends, is carefully poured, fusing directly with the bone marrow and calcified tissue in a process of extreme ossification. The skeleton is not merely coated. It is laced, its structure fundamentally rewritten. The screams of the candidate are muffled by the high-tech restraints and the droning chants of the tech priests who view this violation as a holy sacrament, a perfecting of the flawed human form. When the metal cools, the candidate's skeleton possesses a tensile strength approaching that of an Astartes battle brother. They can now survive impacts that would turn a normal man to pulp, leap from heights that would shatter bones, and deliver blows with the force of a hydraulic piston. Next, the architects of this new body turn their attention to the engine within. The chest cavity is cracked open with brutal efficiency by a hydraulic spreader, revealing the heart and lungs organs now deemed insufficient for their intended purpose. A secondary biomechanical heart, a compact marvel of synth muscle and pumping mechanisms, is grafted alongside the original. It is a redundant system designed to take over in case of catastrophic injury, but also to work in tandem with the primary heart, supercharging the circulatory system to insane levels during combat. This allows for the rapid distribution of combat stimulants and the flushing of toxins. The lungs are similarly augmented with synthetic multi-lobed filtration systems woven into the existing tissue. These new organs allow the candidate to breathe in toxic environments, filter out debilitating gases, and process oxygen with superhuman efficiency, enabling them to sprint for miles without tiring and to fight with explosive energy for extended periods. The process is a bloody, invasive spectacle, a nest of chrome probes, whirring drills, and auto-sutures working deep within the candidate's torso, replacing the fallible works of nature with the cold, reliable perfection of the machine. Finally, the senses, the windows through which the candidate perceives the world, are deemed inadequate and are summarily replaced. The original eyes are scooped from their sockets with callous precision and discarded. In their place, gleaming bionic replacements are jacked directly into the optic nerves. When activated, they grant the candidate vision across multiple spectrums: thermal, electromagnetic, infrared. They can see a target's heat signature through a wall, track the trajectory of a bullet in slow motion, and perceive details at distances that would be a blur to a normal human. Their auditory system undergoes a similar violation. The ear canals are drilled out and replaced with sensitive augmetic receivers, allowing them to hear the faintest whisper from 100 yards away, the thumping of a heart through a reinforced bulkhead, or frequencies far above and below the range of human hearing. This new torrent of sensory data is overwhelming a cacophony that would drive an ordinary mind to madness. But the candidate's mind is no longer ordinary. It has been scoured and rebuilt for a singular purpose, and it quickly learns to filter this flood of information, discarding all that is irrelevant and focusing only on that which pertains to the hunt and the kill. The human is gone. In its place stands a cybernetic predator, its skeleton unbreakable, its engine tireless, and its senses honed to a terrifying, inhuman acuity. The forge has done its work. The flesh is rewritten. The newly forged body is a marvel of biomechanical engineering, but it is merely the hardware. To unlock its full, terrifying potential, to push it into the berserker state that is the Eversor's signature, requires a specific and highly volatile operating system, a symphony of combat drugs and hyper-aggressive chemical stimulants. The Eversor is not merely augmented, it is a being defined by its addiction, its metabolism deliberately re-engineered to be dependent on a cocktail of proprietary chemicals that grant it its unholy speed, strength, and resilience. This chemical indoctrination is perhaps the most dangerous phase of all a trial by fire, where the candidate's body must either adapt to the poison or be consumed by it from within. The rite of passage into this new world of chemical warfare is the baptism of Frenzon. The candidate, their surgical scars still fresh, is placed in a sealed combat cell filled with unarmed but psychotically violent test subjects, condemned criminals, or lobotomized cultists. The candidate is initially overwhelmed, their new body powerful, but their movements still unrefined. They fight, but it is a clumsy defensive struggle. Then, from nozzles in the ceiling, a vaporous green gas begins to fill the chamber. It is a hyperstimulant, a derivative of the penal drug Frenzon, but refined by the temple to a terrifying potency. The candidate inhales. The effect is instantaneous and catastrophic. The drug hits their nervous system like a bolt of lightning. Every synapse fires at once. Their vision bleeds to red. A primal, wordless scream of pure, undiluted rage rips from their throat, a sound that is no longer human. All tactical thought vanishes, replaced by a singular, overwhelming imperative kill. The transformation is absolute. The candidate becomes a whirlwind of motion, a blur of fists and feet. They tear the test subjects apart with their bare hands, their reinforced bones shattering limbs, their fingers gouging out eyes. The violence is not efficient or precise. It is ecstatic, joyful, a rampage of unrestrained ID. They do not stop when the targets are dead. They continue to smash and rip and tear at the twitching corpses until the chamber is nothing but a Jackson Pollock of blood and viscera. The masters watch, analyzing the data feeds. They are looking for the point where the mind breaks and the beast takes over. They are calibrating the precise dosage required to induce maximum ferocity without causing total systemic collapse. For the candidate, this first taste of the berserker state is a revelation, a terrifying, exhilarating glimpse of the god of slaughter that sleeps within them. The baptism of Frenzen is merely an introduction. The true core of an Eversor's power comes from a far more complex and potent alchemical cocktail known only as Fury. This is not a single drug, but a blend of bespoke stimulants, hypersteroids, pain blockers, and synaptic accelerants that can only be synthesized by the magi of the Adeptus Mechanicus assigned to the temple. Fury pushes the Eversor's body into a state of metabolic overdrive that is completely unsustainable. It grants them the ability to move faster than the eye can follow, to rip a steel door from its hinges, to ignore wounds that would instantly fell an Ogren. It turns them into a force of nature. But the cost is immense. Without a constant regulated supply, the Eversor's body would tear itself apart, its own adrenal glands, burning out its muscles, dissolving through lactic acid buildup. To solve this, the candidate undergoes another invasive surgery. A complex chemical dispensation unit is implanted near their spine, a network of vials, pumps, and catheters that integrate directly with their twin hearts and circulatory system. This internal reservoir holds a supply of Fury, constantly monitoring the assassin's biometrics and injecting the precise amount needed to maintain peak combat effectiveness. The candidate's body is now a slave to this machine and the chemicals it provides. They are utterly, irrevocably addicted. The very concept of a life without the burning rush of Fury becomes a biological impossibility. The final layer of this chemical symphony is perhaps the most insidious. It is a process referred to as blood acidulation. In order to maximize the speed at which the combat drugs can affect the system, the candidate's own blood must be made more volatile, more receptive to the chemical agents. A catalytic enzyme is introduced into their bone marrow, permanently altering their hemoglobin. Their blood becomes a potent chemical vector capable of carrying the stimulants to every cell in their body in a fraction of a second. This process also primes their body for its final terrible function. It turns their very blood into a component of a biobomb. The catalyzed blood, when exposed to a specific activating agent upon the assassin's death, will detonate with explosive force, turning the Eversor's corpse into a chemical weapon that atomizes their body and sprays a cloud of acidic poison over a wide area. The candidate must endure weeks of agonizing adaptation as their body adjusts to this new corrosive biology. They suffer from fevers that should melt flesh, from seizures that threaten to snap their own adamantium-laced spine. Many do not survive this final stage. Their bodies simply dissolve from the inside out, their own circulatory system becoming a river of acid that consumes them. But those who endure, those whose bodies stabilize this volatile internal chemistry, emerge as something truly monstrous. They are no longer creatures of flesh and blood in the conventional sense. They are living chemical weapons, walking bombs, their every cell saturated with the potential for violent explosive death. Their training in the art of killing is about to begin, but the fundamental nature of their being has been irrevocably defined by the forge of biochemistry. They are rage contained in a shell of augmented flesh, powered by a river of poison. With the candidate's mind-body and biochemistry forged into a weapon, the time has come to teach them how to wield the unique tools of their bloody trade. An Eversor's arsenal is an extension of their own berserker nature, intimate, brutal, and designed for maximum lethality in the chaotic crucible of close-quarters combat. The training is relentless, a blur of simulated battles and live-fire exercises that etch the muscle memory of murder deep into their modified reflexes. The goal is to make the act of killing as instinctive as breathing, a seamless flow of motion where thought and action are one. The first instrument they must master is the neuro gauntlet. This is not a simple weapon, but a delivery system for death. A large claw-like device fitted over the hand and forearm, its fingertips are tipped with adamantium talons and riddled with microscopic pores. These pores connect to a reservoir of potent neurotoxins. A mere scratch from the gauntlet is a death sentence, the poison attacking the victim's nervous system and causing a swift, agonizing demise marked by violent convulsions. The training begins against heavily armored servitors, teaching the candidate the precise amount of force needed to breach plasteel and ceramite. They learn to target the weak points in armor. The joints, the visor slits the exhaust ports with lightning-fast strikes. But the true mastery of the weapon comes from the live fire exercises. The candidate is unleashed upon condemned heretics and political prisoners, often in claustrophobic environments like derelict ship corridors or hive city tunnels. They are taught that every movement must be a potential killing blow. A parry becomes a rake across the face. A block becomes a thrust into the gut. They learn the dance of the gauntlet, a whirlwind of slashes and stabs, their bodies moving with a fluid grace that belies the weapon's savage purpose. The prefects of fury instruct them to watch the death throes of their victims, to study the effects of the different poisons they can load into the gauntlet, to understand the unique terror that a chemical death inspires. The neuro-gauntlet becomes a part of them, their own hand transformed into an instrument of exquisite agony. The second signature weapon is the executioner pistol. It is a brutal hybrid, a fusion of a bolt pistol's explosive power and a needle pistol's insidious subtlety. This oversized firearm fires two types of ammunition. The primary rounds are mass-reactive bolts, just like those used by the Space Marines, which detonate with horrific force inside a target. The secondary firing mode launches bio-disruptive needles, silent darts filled with the same toxins used in the gauntlet, capable of killing a target quietly from a distance before the main assault begins. Training with this weapon is a challenge of control. The candidate must learn to master the pistol's punishing recoil, to fire with pinpoint accuracy, even while sprinting, vaulting over obstacles, or in the throes of a frenzy-induced rage. They practice in kill houses, filled with holographic targets that mimic enemy formations, learning to switch between ammunition types in a split second. A silent needle for the sentry, an explosive bolt for the armored brute charging through the door. The ultimate test is the Red Ball, a simulation where the candidate is assaulted from all directions by hundreds of targets in a 360-degree environment. They must become a vortex of destruction, their pistol barking an unending staccato rhythm of death, their movements economical and precise, their mind a combat cogitator, calculating trajectories and threat priorities in microseconds. The executioner pistol is not just a firearm, it is their scepter of judgment, the tool through which they announce their arrival and pronounce the Emperor's sentence of death upon his foes. By the end of this training, the pistol and the gauntlet are no longer tools they carry. They are extensions of their will, as much a part of their body as their own augmented limbs. The image of an Eversor is one of unrestrained, thunderous violence, a crimson storm of death that obliterates everything in its path. While this is the ultimate truth of their purpose, it is an incomplete picture. A storm that rages in the empty wilderness wastes its fury. To be a truly effective weapon of terror, the storm must be delivered to the very heart of the enemy. Thus, the candidate must be taught the art of the ghost, the skills of infiltration and stealth that precede the hurricane. They must learn to become a phantom, a whisper in the dark, a silent predator that stalks its prey, unseen, unheard, right up until the moment the world explodes. This training proves that an Eversor is not a mindless beast. It is a beast with a method, a calculating engine of slaughter, whose madness is a tool to be deployed, not a state of constant being. The first phase of this clandestine training is dubbed Jisuyen Tuong, Walking Through Walls, a literal and figurative title for the art of breaching. The candidates are placed in vast multi-layered replicas of enemy fortifications, the command bunker of a traitor guard regiment, the spire of a renegade planetary governor, the bioship of a Genestealer cult. These are not simple obstacle courses. They are fully functioning security puzzles complete with pressure-sensitive flooring laser grids, auto-turrets, and patrols of combat servitors programmed with complex search patterns. The candidate is not taught to bypass these systems with the delicate grace of a Calidus. They are taught to shatter them with controlled brutality. Their superhuman strength allows them to pry open sealed ventilation shafts and move silently through spaces too small for a normal man. Their bionic eyes can see the energy signatures of hidden traps and power conduits, allowing them to disable them at the source with a precise bolt shot or a carefully placed explosive. They are trained extensively with melter bombs, learning to place charges with surgical precision to vaporize a specific section of a reinforced wall or blast through a sealed bulkhead. In a fraction of a second, the detonation itself serving as the opening salvo of their assault. They learn to climb sheer surfaces, using their neuro-gauntlet's claws, moving up the side of a fortress like a monstrous insect, a shadow against the stone. This is not the stealth of a whisper, but the stealth of a coiled viper. They are a silent, contained explosion, moving with deadly purpose through the veins of an enemy stronghold, waiting for the perfect tactical moment to detonate. The second more gruesome skill is known as Hua Trang Bang Mao Camouflage by Blood. This is the art of using the chaos of the battlefield chaos they themselves have created as a form of concealment. In sprawling, complex simulations, the candidate is taught to strike and fade. After a furious initial assault that leaves a corridor littered with mangled bodies and smoldering wreckage, they are trained to vanish. They learn to submerge themselves in pools of industrial lubricant or stagnant water, their augmented lungs allowing them to remain hidden for extended periods. They practice pulling the still warm corpses of their enemies over themselves, becoming just another part of the butchery, their heat signature masked by the dead as they wait for a high-value target or a reinforcement squad to pass by. They learn that a fire caused by a detonated fuel tank is not just a weapon. It is a curtain of smoke and flickering light that can mask their advance. The psychological impact of this tactic is immense. The enemy, believing the initial crazed attacker has been killed or has moved on, begins to regroup. It is in this moment of lowered guard that the Eversor erupts from a pile of their own fallen comrades, a gore-drenched apparition of vengeance, turning a moment of relief into a fresh wave of screaming terror. They become the monster in the closet, the ghost on the stairs, proving that even in the midst of the roaring storm of their fury, there is a chilling, predatory silence at its eye. This fusion of silent infiltration and explosive violence defines their unique tactical niche, a weapon that can get anywhere and once there can destroy everything. All the individual components of the weapon have been forged. The mind is a vessel of pure hatred. The body is a cybernetic war machine. The bloodstream is a river of combat stimulants, and the hands have mastered their tools of murder and infiltration. Now, these disparate elements must be integrated, tested, and perfected in a series of grand, horrific dress rehearsals. These are the Red Drill's full-scale combat simulations that push the candidate to the absolute limits of their endurance and lethality. They are not merely tests. They are the final abrasive polishing of the killing machine, designed to grind away any remaining inefficiencies and solidify the bloody purpose of their existence. The first Red Drill is the Servitor Purge. The candidate is unleashed into a sprawling, multi-leveled manufactorum replica the size of a small city block. Within it, thousands of servitors, the lobotomized cybernetic drones of the Imperium, are programmed to simulate a worker rebellion. Some are simple menial units, but hundreds have been retrofitted into combat models armed with industrial claws, rivet guns, and plasma cutters. The candidate's mission is simple and absolute: exterminate every single one. The objective is not survival. It is efficiency. The candidate is a blur of motion, a crimson comet streaking through the gantries and assembly lines. The manufactorum becomes a cacophony of screeching metal, exploding machinery, and the wet slap of biocoolant spilling from severed servitors. The executioner pistol barks, blowing apart servitor heads at range. The neuro gauntlet tears through metal plating and hydraulic pistons in close combat. The candidate learns to manage the flow of their combat drugs, to ride the wave of the Fury cocktail for maximum effect, and to recognize the onset of the chemical backlash. They learn to process the battlefield on a macro scale, identifying choke points, prioritizing clusters of armed hostiles, and using the industrial environment to their advantage, detonating fuel cells and collapsing structures to kill dozens of targets at once. The masters of the temple monitor from a control sanctum measuring kill counts per minute ammunition expenditure, and the candidate's ability to maintain peak lethality over a prolonged engagement. It is a brutal quantitative analysis of their destructive potential. Surviving the manufactorum proves efficiency, but the next drill is designed to test something far darker, the complete and utter annihilation of empathy. This drill is known only as the hunt for the failed. Not all candidates endure the brutal augmentation processes. Some bodies reject the implants, some minds shatter completely rather than bend to the conditioning. These failures are not simply euthanized, they are repurposed for one final terrible lesson. They are given a head start and released into a vast enclosed wilderness, a simulated death world jungle or a ruined cityscape. Then the successful candidate is sent in to hunt them down. This is a horrifying perversion of a final exam. The candidate must stalk and kill the very individuals who suffered alongside them in the early stages of their training. They may recognize a face, a fighting style, a desperate cry from a past they can no longer truly remember. The test is to see if any flicker of recognition, any seed of mercy remains. Any hesitation, any deviation from a swift and brutal execution is marked as a critical failure. The candidate hunts their former brethren with cold, detached ferocity, their bionic senses easily tracking the terrified, broken runaways. The kills are swift and passionless. It is the final cauterization of the soul, a lesson that teaches them that the only bond they have is to the temple, and that failure in any form is a heresy worthy only of death. It ensures that when they are sent to kill a beloved war hero who has turned traitor, or a planetary governor who was once a celebrated icon, they will feel nothing but the cold satisfaction of a task well executed. The final graduation exercise is the Citadel Inviolate, the ultimate synthesis of all their acquired skills. The candidate is tasked with a mock assassination of a high-value target, an incredibly detailed animatronic puppet, or a vat-grown clone located in the command center of a fully staffed and armed fortress. The fortress is manned by the temple's own elite Skitari warriors and combat servitors, all operating under live-fire protocols. This is the closest thing to a real mission they will ever experience. The candidate must perform every stage of the operation alone. They begin with infiltration using their walking through walls skills to bypass the outer perimeter. Then they must navigate the fortress's interior, using their camouflage by blood techniques to move unseen, a ghost in the machine. Once they reach the heavily fortified command center, the mission parameters change from stealth to all-out assault. They must become the Storm. They breach the final bastion with explosive force and unleash a symphony of destruction upon the elite guards, transforming the sterile command deck into a charnel house within seconds. Their primary goal is to kill the target, but a secondary objective is to cause maximum chaos and damage, destroying strategic command consoles and eliminating the entire command staff. There is no exfiltration plan. The simulation only ends when the primary objective is met and the candidate is finally killed by the overwhelming number of remaining forces. It is the perfect encapsulation of their destiny, a solitary descent into the heart of the enemy, a brief, incandescent moment of absolute carnage, and an inevitable glorious death in service to the Emperor. If they succeed, they have proven themselves worthy. They are no longer a candidate. They are a weapon ready to be deployed. The crucible of the red drills is the final fire that burns away the last dross of the candidate's former self. They have survived a process that has destroyed countless others in mind, body, and spirit. They have been broken down to their constituent atoms and reassembled into something terrifyingly new. They are no longer a person who has been trained to kill. They are a killing thing that wears the shape of a person. The final stage of their genesis is not a test, but a coronation, a series of rituals that formalize their transformation, seal their old identity away forever, and prepare them for their one true purpose, to await the call to die for the Emperor. The first of these ceremonies is the rite of the skull mask. The successful candidate, their body still bearing the marks of their final brutal simulation, is brought to the temple's central sanctum. The chamber is circular, stark, and cold. In niches along the curved walls rest the skull masks of every Eversor assassin currently in service and those of the honored dead. Each is identical, a stylized, snarling skull, its features locked in a rictus of perpetual fury. These are not merely masks. They are complex sensory arrays housing advanced comms units targeting reticles and biostatus monitors. But more than that, they are the new face of the assassin. A high prefect, flanked by tech priests murmuring binary psalms, stands before the candidate. He holds a new mask, gleaming and unblemished. He does not speak a name, for the candidate has none. He addresses them by their newly assigned serial number, a cold string of alphanumerical code that will be their only designation for the remainder of their short, violent life. Subject 734. The prefect's voice booms. You have been weighed in the balance of blood and fire, and you have not been found wanting. You have been emptied, and now you shall be filled. You have been nameless, and now you shall be given the only name you will ever need. He raises the mask. This is your face. This is your identity. It is the last thing the enemies of the Emperor will ever see. By this sign, they will know that their doom has come. The candidate kneels, and the prefect lowers the mask onto their head. There is a hiss of pneumatics and the click of magnetic locks as it seals to the interface ports surgically implanted in their skull. The world dissolves into a stream of tactical data. Their vision is now overlaid with threat analysis runes, ammunition counters, and their own vital signs. The face they were born with is now irrelevant, a piece of flesh hidden behind an icon of death. When they rise, they are no longer Subject 734. They are Eversor. With their new identity bestowed, the final ritual can commence the long sleep. The newly christened assassin is escorted by silent servitors from the sanctum into the cryocrypts, a vast frigid hall that serves as the temple's armory of living weapons. Rows upon rows of cryostasis pods line the walls, each containing a dormant Eversor, their bodies perfectly preserved, their rage held in check by the freezing temperatures and chemical inhibitors. The assassin is stripped of all clothing and guided into their designated pod. The interior is a cold clinical coffin of metal and glass. As they lie back, a network of tubes and injectors descends from the pod's ceiling, locking into the various ports and shunts on their augmented body. These will keep their physique at peak condition, administering nutrient slurries and muscle stimulants even in hibernation. A final neurolink connects to the port at the base of their skull. This is the most crucial component. An Eversor's rage cannot be allowed to lie fallow, lest it atrophy. As the cryo process begins flooding the pod with supercooled gas that coats their skin in a layer of frost, the neurolink activates. It does not give them peaceful dreams. It plunges their dormant mind into a perpetual, looping nightmare. They are fed a constant stream of simulated combat, a digital phantasmagoria of slaughter. In their sleep, they kill endless hordes of heretics and xenos. They relive their most brutal training exercises. They experience over and over the orgasmic rush of the Fury cocktail and the satisfying crunch of bone beneath their gauntlet. Their sleep is not rest. It is a whetstone constantly honing the edge of their hatred, keeping their murderous instincts at a razor's sharpness. The lid of the cryopod slides shut with a heavy final thud, sealing them in darkness and cold. The human being is well and truly dead. The weapon is now stored catalogued and waiting. A silent, sleeping monster, dreaming only of murder, ready to be awakened. For decades, even centuries, the weapon can sleep. Sealed in its icy tomb, the Eversor assassin's mind is lost in an endless, looping nightmare of slaughter, while its body is kept in a state of perfect, preserved readiness. It is a hanging sword, a promise of annihilation held in reserve until the Imperium's need becomes so desperate and dire that no other solution will suffice. That call, when it comes, is not a whisper, but a thunderclap echoing through the most secret channels of Imperial power. It begins as a pulse of encrypted data, an almost imperceptible burst of information traveling at the speed of thought from the hallowed spires of the Imperial Palace on Terra. The message, cloaked in layers of psycho-coded ciphers and prohibitive wards that only the highest echelon astropaths can unravel, is directed to the Grand Master of the Officio Assassinorum. Its contents are brief, cold, and non-negotiable. A rebellion has festered in the Stygian cluster. A war governor, a decorated hero of a dozen crusades, has declared himself an independent lord leading scores of guard regiments down the path of treachery. The contagion of his heresy threatens to destabilize an entire segmentum. Conventional means have failed. An Astra Militarum assault would be mired for years and cost billions of lives. The High Lords of Terra, in their cold wisdom, have sanctioned an extreme sanction. The order has been given. An example must be made. The request specified a temple Eversor. In a hidden command sanctum, deep beneath a secret moon, the Grand Master reads the transcript. A three-dimensional star map glimmers in the air before him, highlighting the corrupted sector. The clade prefects of the Eversor Temple analyze the target data. They assess the defenses, the enemy's psychology, and the desired Terra impact. The decision is made. A number is chosen from their sleeping armory. Eversor 734. Its psychological profile showed a particular aptitude for uncontrolled aggression, even by their standards. Its physical specifications were a perfect match for the environmental conditions of the target world. The order is relayed to the cryo vaults. Awaken 734. In the frigid hall of slumber, a low klaxon sounds. A single cryopod among the thousands begins to glow with an internal light. Red runes flash across its surface, signaling the reanimation sequence. Inside, the chilled gas is vented, replaced by oxygen-rich air and a vaporous haze of stimulant chemicals. Auto-injectors slam into the assassin's frozen body, pumping in a jumpstart cocktail of combat drugs and metabolic enhancers. The frost on its skin melts, then steams away. Muscles convulse violently. Its biological and mechanical hearts stutter, then synchronize into a powerful pounding war drum rhythm. In the mind, the programmed nightmare of killing reaches a frantic crescendo and is then abruptly severed, replaced by a cold, clean feed of mission data, target name, location, fortress layout. Eyelids twitch, gauntleted fingers clench into fists. The lid of the pod hisses open. Eversor Assassin 734 sits up. It does not gasp, it does not blink. It simply rises its body, already at peak operational performance. A single primal roar, a sound of decades of pent-up fury, escapes the grill of its skull mask. The weapon is awake. An Eversor assassin is not deployed by conventional means. It is not ferried to a war zone on a landing craft with common soldiers. Its arrival must be an event, an act of violence in itself, a shocking prelude to the symphony of destruction that is to follow. The chosen method of insertion is as unique and suicidal as the assassin itself, a single-occupant drop pod, a spear designed to be plunged through the heart of enemy defenses from the cold orbit of space. In the launch bay of a cloaked strike cruiser, Eversor 734 is sealed inside its transport. The drop pod is a brutish, inelegant machine. It is an armored coffin, some 4 meters long, covered in ablative ceramic plates and fitted with a single powerful retro thruster. Inside the space is claustrophobically tight. The assassin is clamped into a shock-dampening harness, its body held immobile, while a host of interfaces plug into its suit, feeding a constant stream of combat drugs and tactical data directly into its systems. There are no windows, no manual controls. The assassin is a passenger on its own ride to hell, its mind focused entirely on the stream of mission data scrolling across its mask's internal display. Tech priests perform the final rites, anointing the pod's hull with sacred oils and chanting binary psalms to its machine spirit. Then, with a hiss of pressurized gas, the pod is loaded into the launch tube. The order is given. With a soul-shaking concussion, magnetic clamps release, and a massive electromagnetic piston hurls the pod from the ship. For a moment it tumbles in the silence of the void, a lone black speck against the stars. Then its thruster ignites a brilliant plume of white-hot plasma that rockets it towards the target planet below. It does not take a gentle trajectory. It plummets a metal arrow fired from the bow of an angry god. The rebellious planet's orbital defenses scream warnings. Laser batteries begin to fire lances of energy, scything through the darkness. Some miss. Some strike home their intense heat, charring and melting the pod's outer ceramic shell, but failing to breach its adamantium core. It punches through the defense grid like a charging bull, unstoppable and single-minded. As the pod hits the upper atmosphere, friction turns it into a man-made meteor. A tail of orange and white fire streams behind it, a brilliant omen in the sky for those below. Inside, the temperature soars, and the assassin is crushed into its harness by G-forces that would turn a normal person into a bloody paste. But its reinforced body and supercharged circulatory system endure. It remains perfectly conscious, perfectly focused, its twin hearts beating a steady, lethal rhythm. The target is the command citadel of the renegade war governor. The pod, guided by last-second adjustments from its maneuvering thrusters, aims for the very center of the complex. It is not aiming for a landing pad. It is aiming for the building itself. The impact is apocalyptic. With a deafening boom that can be heard for miles, the pod smashes through the roof of the command center, tearing through multiple levels of reinforced concrete and plasteel as if they were paper. It comes to a rest in the main strategy chamber, a smoking, blackened hulk of metal amidst the wreckage and the mangled bodies of unfortunate staff officers. For a moment, there is stunned silence. Then, with a pneumatic hiss, the explosive bolts on the pod's front hatch detonate. The door is blown from its hinges, smashing into the far wall. From the black smoke and sparking electronics, a figure emerges. Its skull mask seems to glow in the gloom, and a roar of pure, unleashed fury echoes through the room. The meteor of wrath has arrived. The stunned silence in the command chamber lasts for a single, drawn-out heartbeat. It is the quiet intake of breath before a hurricane makes landfall. The surviving officers and elite guards, their dress uniforms spattered with the dust of the ceiling, stare in disbelief at the smoking crater and the monstrous figure that has emerged from it. Then, the symphony begins. Eversor 734 does not hesitate, does not assess. It explodes into motion. The first note is the deafening bark of the executioner pistol. A decorated Vox officer, his mouth still agape as he reaches for his sidearm, vanishes in a red mist as a mass-reactive bolt detonates in his chest. The second note is a wet, tearing sound. A hulking bodyguard in carapace armor charges forward power maul, raised only to be met by the assassin's lunge. The neuro-gauntlet, a blur of motion, flashes past his guard and rips across his throat. The man drops his weapon hands, clawing at his neck as he collapses his body, convulsing violently as the potent toxins flood his nervous system. In the space of 2 seconds, the chain of command has been shattered, and the room's most formidable defender has been dispatched with contemptuous ease. This opening salvo triggers a wave of panic and a hail of gunfire. Las beams crisscross the room, stitching patterns of scorched metal across the pod's hull and the surrounding bulkheads. The Eversor is no longer where it was. It moves with a speed that defies physics, a black phantom weaving through the storm of energy bolts. Its movements are not human. It runs along walls, its augmented limbs defying gravity. It leaps over command consoles, its adamantium-laced skeleton absorbing the impact of a 30-foot jump with ease. The storm of violence becomes a maelstrom. Every action is a kill. A sweeping motion of its arm sends 3 staff officers flying, their bones shattered. A point-blank shot from the executioner pistol turns a charging soldier's head into a cloud of vaporized gore. It is a whirlwind of steel and flesh, a living embodiment of the Emperor's wrath, turning a sterile high-tech command center into a blood-drenched abattoir. The screams of the dying are drowned out by the constant roar of its pistol and the chilling, inhuman howl that emanates from its mask. Its path is not random. Through the chaos, it carves a direct, unwavering line toward the chamber's elevated command dais, where the traitor war governor stands, his face a mask of arrogant fury, now curdling into stark terror. He is protected by the best of the best, a retinue of scions, their hotshot laser guns glowing, forming a final disciplined firing line. They unleash a volley of concentrated fire that would stop a battle tank. The Eversor takes the hits. Plumes of smoke and ceramite dust erupt from its body as the high-energy blasts strike home. It stumbles, but does not fall. The pain blockers in its veins render the wounds meaningless. It answers the volley with a full-throated roar and charges directly into the guns. It hits the scion line like a battering ram. The disciplined formation dissolves into a chaotic brawl of death. A gauntlet thrust impales one scion through the chest plate. The executioner pistol is pressed against another's helmet, and fired the backblast incinerating is reduced to mangled, twitching heaps of armor and flesh. The Eversor now stands before the war governor. The traitor, a giant of a man famed for his dueling prowess, draws a shimmering power sword. For a moment there is the illusion of a climactic duel. It is an illusion that lasts for less than a second. The Eversor does not parry the sword. It smashes the governor's sword arm with a backhand blow, the crunch of augmented bone shattering natural bone echoing in the ruined chamber. As the governor screams, the Neura gauntlet plunges deep into his chest. The Eversor leans in close, its skull mask inches from the traitor's face, and holds him there, forcing him to feel the poison stop his heart. The primary target is eliminated, but the mission is not over. The symphony is not complete until the final crescendo. There is no escape. There is only the killing. With the governor's corpse still impaled on its arm, the Eversor turns to the remaining terrified survivors and the approaching thunder of reinforcements and bellows a challenge of pure murderous intent. An Eversor assassin is a supernova. It is a star deliberately engineered to burn with an impossible incandescent brightness, a brilliance that can outshine a sun for a brief, glorious moment. But the price of such intensity is a short and violent life. The same hyper-aggressive chemistry and brutal biomechanics that grant it godlike power also guarantee its swift and certain self-destruction. The weapon is designed not just to kill, but to be wholly consumed by the act of killing. With the primary target eliminated, the Eversor continues its rampage, but something has changed. The symphony of destruction, once a flawless performance of lethal precision, begins to falter. A subtle tremor runs through its augmented limbs. The lightning-fast movements become a fraction slower, the seamless flow of combat interrupted by microscopic stutters. Inside the skull mask, the once clean tactical display is now a flickering chaos of red warning runes. Hydraulic pressure failure flashes in one corner. Biometric cascade imminent blares in another. The twin hearts, which had beaten with the steady rhythm of a war drum, now hammer erratically desynchronized and failing. The constant, overwhelming flood of the Fury combat cocktail has pushed the assassin's body past its breaking point. Lactic acid, corrosive as bleach, floods its synth muscle fibers. The neural pathways, overstimulated for too long, begin to misfire. Its own supercharged blood begins to break down the walls of its veins. The body is betraying itself, literally dissolving from the sheer unsustainable strain of its own chemically induced rage. It is a biological engine that has redlined for too long, and now its pistons are beginning to melt. Yet it does not stop. It cannot. Its conditioning is absolute. It continues to fight, to kill, to obey its final imperative cause, maximum damage, even as it is coming apart at the seams. It is a dying star collapsing in on itself, but determined to take the rest of the solar system with it. As a fresh wave of heavily armed reinforcements storms the ruined command chamber, laying down a sheet of solid slugs and explosive rounds, the assassin's body finally reaches its terminal limit. A critical alert flashes across its vision, the final message its brain will ever process. Meltdown protocol engaged. This is the final gift of the temple, the last terrible function programmed into its very being. A chemical signal is sent from the main processor in its spine to the catalytic enzymes that have saturated its blood since the final days of its creation. The failsafe has been triggered. A horrific, beautiful chain reaction begins. An unnatural, sickly green light begins to emanate from the assassin, shining through the battle-damaged cracks in its armor. Its body tenses, not in pain, but in a final orgasmic spasm of pure energy. It throws its head back and lets out one last triumphant roar, a sound that is both a death cry and a final war cry. Then it detonates. It is not a conventional explosion of shrapnel and fire. It is a biochemical holocaust. The Eversor's body atomizes in a silent, blinding flash of green light, releasing a rapidly expanding wave of pure destructive energy. Everything within a 50-meter radius is subjected to a potent weaponized acid. Metal dissolves, running like water. Concrete turns to bubbling sludge. And flesh simply evaporates. The charging soldiers, their allies, their enemies, the living and the dead are all unwritten from existence in a heartbeat, their bodies reduced to hissing clouds of vapor and scorched shadows on the blasted walls. It is the ultimate act of denial, a final spiteful obliteration of everything and everyone nearby. The assassin's duty is complete. Its life, its death, and its very corpse have been expended in the service of the Emperor. All that remains is silence and the lingering acrid smell of total annihilation. The aftermath of an Eversor deployment is not measured in simple casualty counts or strategic objectives achieved. Its true impact is a far more insidious and enduring legacy, a poison of pure terror that seeps into the psyche of an enemy and festers for generations. On the rebellious world in the Stygian cluster, the physical damage is clear. The heart of the enemy's command structure has been cauterized, leaving a smoking, melted ruin where a proud citadel once stood. The traitor war governor is dead, his entire command staff erased in a single brutal hour. The decapitation of the rebellion is total and absolute. But the story that spreads through the ranks of the surviving traitor guardsmen is not one of a successful special operations strike. It is a ghost story, a myth of a vengeful angel of death, a skull-faced demon that descended from the heavens in a burning star. They speak in hushed, terrified whispers of a monster that could not be killed by laser gun or bolt gun, a whirlwind of blades and fury that tore apart their finest warriors like dolls. They speak of its final, unholy self-destruction, a blast that dissolved men into screaming vapor. This fear is a weapon far more potent than any blade or bomb. It breeds paranoia. Every shadow could hide another monster. Every unexpected communication failure could be the prelude to a new attack. The morale of the rebellion, once built on the charismatic strength of their leader, collapses into a quagmire of terror and infighting. The heresy withers and dies not from a sword blow, but from a fatal injection of fear. This is the true purpose of the Eversor, not just to kill an enemy, but to murder their courage. Here, the central thesis of the weapon's genesis is laid bare. The Eversor assassin is the perfect, brutal embodiment of the Imperium of man's guiding philosophy. Humanity is a resource to be sacrificed in the brutal calculus of survival. To create this weapon, a human being was systematically and cruelly annihilated. A mind was broken, a soul was scoured, and a body was warped into a monstrous cage for a chemical storm. Every vestige of personality, memory, and free will was surgically excised and replaced with a singular, burning imperative to kill in the Emperor's name. The Imperium did not teach a man to be a weapon. It unmade a man to forge a weapon in his place. This horrific process, this unholy litany of deconstruction, is not seen as a tragedy or a crime by its architects. It is seen as a grim, solemn necessity. It is a testament to their unwavering belief that in a galaxy so thoroughly drenched in evil, cruelty, and monstrousness, the only viable response is to create a focused, directed cruelty and monstrousness of their own that is even more efficient and terrifying. The Eversor is a weapon created by profound evil to fight a universe that is profoundly more so. It is the screaming, dying, self-destructing manifestation of the principle that one must become a monster to defeat monsters. The cycle is endless. The legacy is eternal. Far away in the secret halls of the temple, the name of Eversor, 734, is etched onto a memorial wall, another number added to a list of expended assets. His sacrifice will not be mourned, only recorded. His actions will not be celebrated, only analyzed for tactical data. And in the coldest, deepest chambers of the training facility, a new subject harvested from a bloody death world or a brutal scholar progenium is strapped into a chair. The psychosurgeons make their final adjustments. The whispers are about to begin. The process of unmaking starts anew. A new soul is laid upon the anvil of necessity, ready to be hammered into the shape of a monster by the relentless needs of the Imperium. For in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, there is no peace, there is no respite, and there is no shortage of raw material for the forges of fury. The war is eternal, and the hunger for new weapons is insatiable. The screams from the training cells go unheard, just another silent, necessary sacrifice to keep the flame of humanity from being extinguished for one more bloody day.